and as a former member and chair of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, you advocated for those without privilege, those without voice, and those who are routinely encountered with lessened regard. Dr. Berry, you've spoken often and passionately about the importance of persistence when it comes to creating change. Enduring change, you've noted, requires focus and resilience and patience. It typically arrives in waves, not spasms, and you have been a wave maker for generations. In 1976, you became the Chancellor of the University of Colorado and the first Black woman to head a major research university. In 1984, In 1984, you founded the Free South Africa movement, dedicated to abolishing the abolition of apartheid in South Africa. In your recent books and in your position as the Gerald Dean R. Siegel Professor of American Social Thought at the University of Pennsylvania, you've laid bare the political and economic forces that have stymied progress on everything from parental leave to the unequal application of the law against people of color. You once said, every generation has to make its own dent in the wall of injustice. Dr. Berry, empowered by your example, ignited by your words, future generations will see to it that the wall continues to crumble. Mr. President, on behalf of the trustees, faculty, and students and staff at Clark University, it gives me great pleasure to request that the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa be conferred upon Dr. Mary Frances Berry.
I most certainly do. By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Clark University, I do hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. I present you with the diploma and hood of Clark University and warmly welcome you into the company of alumni who challenge convention and change our world. Congratulations. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mary Frances Berry, your commencement speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And to you, I want to thank you and the board and all the platform guests and the other people with whom I'm getting an honorary degree today. They're such outstanding folk. I'm lucky to be in their company. But first, I want to do what everybody else has done, and that is to congratulate all of you who are graduating. Congratulations. But I also congratulate your relatives, your parents, your grandparents, and all your friends on this occasion. I also congratulate the faculty who share with you the responsibility for your accomplishments, and maybe even the administrators who just got out of the way, I guess, or did something or facilitated something, whatever they did. They did well. Today, your achievements are being recognized, and I'm going to try to talk no more than 15 minutes, which is what they gave me. If I go beyond that, stomp your feet, and I'll stop. Your achievements that are being recognized are more than academic attainment. And we've talked, the trustee chair talked about how the lockdown of the pandemic had differential effects. But I want to focus on those for a minute. Some of you lost loved ones and dear friends, as I did. Some of you might have had classmates who had to drop out. Please don't forget them today. And some of you were lucky because you had space in which to work. Even if, as one student told me, it was among relatives she didn't like very much, okay? Others studied under the most difficult circumstances. And I know students, and so do some of you, who had to jerry-rig access to the internet and had no quiet place to do their work or even to participate in class. But they made it through. And it is important for you to take pride in facing the world now as it has become, and not like what you wish it was or whatever it was some time ago or whatever. And you should be proud of achieving this milestone at this time. Knowing you can overcome adversity, major adversity, should strengthen your confidence in the years to come. And I recognize that we have all experienced many momentous events lately, disasters as well as glories, and that we're warned that more surges are likely to come. We don't know whether that's true or not, but they keep warning us. But remember, whatever happens, that you came through, remember your resiliency. And that applies to all of us who made it here. And as we move on, I admonish you to understand that your education can be used to help in shaping a better future for everyone, because all of us are members of the human community, and each of us can accept or reject a moral obligation to contribute to the society in which we live. As Benjamin Franklin put it, and I'll quote him because at Penn we always quote Benjamin Franklin, one of the founders, and most of the time we make up something that he said so we can win an argument. And nobody knows any better, so it works. But he actually said this. He said, when he got up every day, he asked himself, what good can I do? What good shall I do today? That he did that every day. You should, above all else, no matter what goes on around you, be able going forward to hold on to ideas you consider worthy and discard those that are not, and you should develop the wisdom to know the difference. Because what? There's serenity in that. Your experience and education here at Clark with that great motto, Challenge Convention, Change Our World, should have prepared you to conceptualize and to try new things. Teddy Roosevelt, President Theodore Roosevelt, spoke at the first Clark graduation in 1905. And I'm not going to quote his speech, but I'm going to paraphrase a few words he said. It is true of the nation as of the individual that the greatest doer must also be a great dreamer. But of course, if the dream is not followed by action, then it is nothing but a diversion from actually doing something. Speaking of dreams and dreamers, when Coretta Scott King and I worked together in the struggle in all those years after Dr. King's assassination, we talked often about a lot of things, but one of those was how people take him out of context for their own purposes. Either they say Martin was just a dreamer, Dr. King was a dreamer. On the other hand, he wanted us all to be colorblind and assume that we're judged by the content of our character. And what he actually said is that we needed to work to make sure that it would be possible someday that we could be colorblind. If we followed the admonition of those who misinterpret him, we would naively act like people don't see race. And sometimes that can get you killed, like those people in Buffalo, or it can save you, like the white man the shooter apologized to when he saw he was white and didn't kill him and moved on to kill another black person. But the main thing is that she and I did, this is something we did whenever we were faced with a human rights challenge, a prescription I'll give you. We would say to each other, what would Martin do? She would say, what would Martin do? And we'd talk about what we thought Martin would do about this, Dr. King. What would he do to move us forward toward the beloved community that he worked so hard to achieve and got him killed? One of those challenges that came about was, during the Clinton administration, the issue of whether gays and lesbians should be allowed to serve in the military legally. And we knew that Dr. King was a pacifist, and he didn't like the idea of talking about the military at all. But we considered his checklist when we discussed it, when she was asked to come out publicly and say something in his name. The checklist is this: cowardice asks when something is proposed, is it safe? Expediency asks, is it politic? Vanity asks, is it popular? Is it poll tested? How will I look? Conscience asks, is it right? Is it right? And then he says, there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic, not popular, but you must take it because it is right. And at the time, some leading black clergymen who were friends of ours in the struggle, who were always concerned about taking care of Coretta and keeping her comfortable and out of the, they tried to keep her out of the limelight, but she was in it to help Martin Luther King's vision. They told her she should stay out of this issue. It was too sticky. Don't say anything about it. You should avoid the subject. Pretend like you haven't heard about it. But after we talked and went over the list, we agreed that Dr. King wanted to end invidious discrimination against everybody. So I went down to Atlanta. She said, come down and stand with me, and stood with her as she publicly supported those who called for the admission of gays and lesbians in the U.S. military. And to our delight, one of those men, she called them the men who were with Martin, one of those men, Joe Lowry, decided that he would come over and stand with us, which was really fantastic when he did it. Now, this checklist that I gave you can be used for many purposes. It can be used when we're told to believe things that don't make any sense, like being told everything is rosy by a leader, a politician, and that your worries about having less money than what is needed to pay your bills for the month is just all in your own mind. It's not real. And in any way, it's not going to last. That's what my preacher calls having more month than money. In other words, your money is going to run out before the month is over. My generation of activists believe that we had a responsibility to make our own dent in the wall of injustice. This is a wonderful prescription that my good buddy Roger Wilkins always said. That was the responsibility we thought was left to us from our foreparents and from Dr. King and Thurgood Marshall's mentor, Charles Hamilton Houston, who was the man who had the plan that led to Brown versus Board of Education. And yes, the singer, Nina Simone, who used to sing and repeat to us repeatedly that freedom means no fear. We could not imagine ourselves passing from this earth without doing all we could to achieve a just society. Gesundheit. That's why Martin Luther King and Coretta left Boston and went back south after their graduate education. That's why when I heard him speak at Riverside Church in New York against the war in Vietnam, when I was a student, I was just a student and I was in the anti-war movement, I convinced the Pentagon that I was a reporter, which I wasn't, and got to go to Vietnam so I could see the war for myself. So I hope you will consider the good that might happen if you routinely ask Ben Franklin's question. If you decide to make your own dent in the wall of injustice, I know and you know that there's much still to do. I mean, I can list a lot of the problems you know about: racial conflict, ideological and practical, gun violence, the inflation, the economy, and the list of world problems is long and hard to solve too, especially when to go to war and when to pursue peace. All I can tell you is that having been in the middle of dying elderly men and women and children, grabbing after aircraft, trying to get in the air, after picking us up in the middle of a firefight and ending up having them being shot down and killed while running and falling, I find it hard to think that war instead of peace is ever anything but an absolute last resort for all sides. So I think these problems we ought to think through better. And I know that making change by peaceful means is never easy. We think about the efforts that we used in the movement to try to end corruption and corrupt government in Haiti, which never worked, and which, in fact, the Haitians have been poor since their revolution, even having to pay reparations to the French for having defeated them and ended slavery there. I recall how long it took us in the Free South Africa movement to get sanctions to stop the U.S. government from trading with South Africa and imprisoning all those people for being against apartheid, against President Reagan's opposition. He was opposed to it. He wanted to keep apartheid because he thought it somehow would help to make stability, and I'm not sure what the other arguments were, but I listened. And I remember how happy we were when we went to South Africa, disrupting and urging political prisoners immediate release. And then we met with Nelson Mandela and his family and danced the toi-toi in the streets and celebrated among the people when he left Robbins Island in February 1990. But after all the hallelujahs and the cheers and all of the partying and all of the celebrating, we found out that freedom is a constant struggle. Over the years, we've witnessed there, like other places, a field of broken promises to build housing, repair roads and infrastructure, help the poor, the persistent racial injustice, the bargain that blacks made to get political freedom but not economic control, all of this besetting and natural disasters befuddling their political leadership. So the peaceful road to change is not easy either. We know two other things, that the gap between rich and poor around the world is enormous and persists. Let us be generous and see and hear the least of these around us as part of our beloved community. The homeless on the street. I have some friends who moved out of the community they live in California and moved to somewhere in Utah someplace because they didn't want to look at homeless people anymore. They didn't want to see them, okay? I know people who have told me that they don't contribute to beggars because they might buy some wine or they might buy some drugs. And when I see this, I ask myself, how many of us self-medicate in some way? Maybe some people are mentally ill or just poor and on the streets, while I have money and a doctor's prescription, or I can go to yoga class, hey, and be mindful and feel better. The pandemic has increased our knowledge of how the wealth gap affects educational opportunity. We used to wonder whether using the internet and using all these programs to teach students would bring new opportunities for learning for poor kids in neighborhoods and rural communities where the best teachers are rare. Now we know the answer, don't we? How online courses work. We don't have to wonder. The cost in dropouts, disengagement, depression, destruction of the public school ideal is high, very high. We know that we failed our children. As schools have reopened, many parents haven't sent their children back, and those that do have a hard time just waiting for the next surge. Perhaps we spend too much time adopting the next new thing and too little time fixing our failures. We have witnessed the last few years renewed demands for racial justice. And yet, when people call for reparations or for a new beloved community, they have met with sometimes rejection or with hollow commitments to D&I, diversity and inclusion. The civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s changed our country, and it brought us a long way toward fairness and justice for women, for all the groups of people of color, for the people with disabilities, and for poor people of whatever race and color. Yet we made a mistake in believing that those gains would stick. And some people who were beneficiaries of the struggle have found that backsliding is much too easy. We also forgot, and this is very important, that it's all important, but we forgot to pay attention as we talked about demography and how wonderful diversity is, that some working class people left behind by NAFTA and the decline of unions and the fact that people of color seem to be in vogue, and their own communities have been riddled by fentanyl, or even if they're strivers in white-collar jobs, they see all this talk of getting more people of color, students, employees, and all this stuff as ignoring their discontent and their feelings of exclusion. I tell institutional and corporate leaders who I've met with since George Floyd was assassinated, and they all wanted to meet with somebody and talk about what they were going to do and have somebody approve of what they were doing vocally. I tell them when they glibly adopt diversity and inclusion programs that understanding what you're going to do with the people who are already there is as important as changing the climate or the numbers of people or the workforce or the student population. Otherwise, what do you get? The latest conflict and failure, including cries of reverse discrimination, debates over whose views can be expressed and whose can't, the cancel culture, and which views require punishment, and even we get violence, as we have seen in our nation. My generation knows from experience that the Voting Rights Act of '65 helped us to get more people who look like us into office, elected, appointed, and national Republicans learned the lesson from the Democrats. They watched them. So they got some ideological adherence, and they learned how to put people of color as faces in high places, I call it. They got them all over the place. Now there are people who look like us in state houses, courthouses, the White House, but diversity does not end inequality. We have also found that gender diversity doesn't mean the end of patriarchy. We got all these acts passed, equal pay, Title IX, Title VII. We abolished help-wanted female ads, but the pandemic and current court cases make clear how hard it is to challenge sex discrimination and to overturn traditional gender roles, which still determine choices about employment, giving birth or not, parenting, and the freedom to enjoy one's life. In 1901, W.B. Du Bois wrote that the problem of the 20th century was the problem of the color line. And we've done a lot of hopeful things recently. Derek Chauvin was convicted for the murder of George Floyd. We elected a black biracial president. We elected a black Caribbean South Asian woman as vice president. And the organizing work that students did here at Clark to curb the duties of armed campus police and to create an unarmed civilian corps to handle nonviolent issues is a promising step. Let us hope it will build community, avoid violence, and improve safety. But you graduates must realize as you become alumni that the next generation of students will join in community to challenge and to continue to attack the persistence of discrimination and the color line until we, as a people, accept the consequences of our history and find consensus for a better future. And we have to do that. And despite all the civil rights generation did, we've got labeling changes. We call things different things as we go along. But racist capitalism and white supremacy are still with us. And if white supremacy is indeed a poison in our system, it has been here since the very beginning. It has been here since those 20 Negars came in that ship in 1619 to Virginia, and the colonists decided not to make them all indentured servants, but to make them serve durante vita, which is for life, and created a legal system with assumptions about everything that in fact ended up establishing the structure for a system of exploiting the labor of black people and the perpetuation of slavery. The inability to eradicate racist assumptions from the behavior of so many of our people and the failure to reform racist institutions and the loss of lives that takes place in this country when people are doing nothing but buying Skittles or entering their own house or catching a subway or bus or jogging or going to the grocery store, for goodness sake, are the irrefutable burdens of race that our society bears. And around the world, we see it. If you look at the refugee issues, and you look to see which refugees are treated well and which ones are abused and deported, reflecting so many divisions by religion, ethnicity, and the color line, the evidence of persistent racism is all around us. But I thought that the one issue everybody would agree on, and I was wrong, that everybody would agree on doing something about the harm of climate change. I thought everybody would agree with that. I thought who would disagree that we should do something? And that we would also agree that we ought to do something about the differential effect that it has on people. You know, there's some people who just don't want to change what they're doing because they don't want to change what they're doing, even if you tell them about the harmful effects. There are other people who think it's okay as long as you don't do anything special to try to take into account how it impacts poor people and how it impacts along the color line. The need for environmental justice. Maybe the leaders don't talk about it. Maybe they're just afraid to acknowledge the relationship. I don't know. But poor people, black and brown people, have not surprisingly been the most victimized by climate change and poor government policy. All that stuff about toxic waste and fires and flood-prone lands and all that stuff. And now we have widespread, happening to almost everybody in many neighborhoods, these issues. But you have here in 2022, this year, people have quitting their jobs working on environmental policy in this White House because they've been told not to mention environmental justice, even though they're supposed to be working on environmental policy. That they should scratch that out of anything that they're working on. Just don't mention that, don't mention it, because just don't. How can we make sure that any climate change response, which is hard anyway, considers alleviating racism and classism and poverty? Otherwise, maybe only Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos will be able to escape it into space. Although I know some people who would think that's okay if they go. Legislators and politicians all over this country and around the world have conferences where they set climate goals. They're always setting climate goals, and then nothing happens. Greta Thunberg is right when she says, there are all these meetings, and then after that we only get blah, 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 blah. Hey, she's right. And when we do the same thing on race and gender issues too, but on these climate issues and the way they cut, we get this. If we're serious about saving the world as we know it and passing it along, every policy decision that is made, even War and Peace, should include an assessment of how it will affect our climate goals. Now, who will set these new goals? You. People like you who are graduating this year. You people will do it if it's going to be done. Every time there's a major positive social change, somebody, said Jimmy Baldwin, has to go through the fire. Somebody has to go through the fire. Hard, positive social change for the people who suffer is made not just through our thoughts and prayers when something happens, or passing legislation, or not passing it, or putting it out there when we know it's not going to pass, and even if it does, don't enforce it. Nonviolent protests must be brought to bear on those who have the power. That is the history of our democratic experience. I wrote about that in a book called History Teaches Us to Resist, which is actually 14, not 13. Who will go through the fire this time? Who will make a dent in the wall of injustice? It's your choice. It's all up to you. Your class and the ones who come after you. Some of you have been studying about these issues. Some of you have been protesting various things. Some of you have been organizing. Some of you, major achievers, are ready to do something, to commit yourself, which is what I hope you might do. I understand that there are some people who want to resume completely the enjoyments of a pre-pandemic life. I think it's a little too soon to abandon protection. But I do say to you that the best high I ever had in life was not from wine or drugs, but from being with a little band of committed people working on an issue that would help folks who we didn't have to help. It's easier now because of social media communications. It's simpler. It's also harder because it's easy to mislead people, misinform, and to keep social movements under surveillance. But however it's done, I say to you, my experience is that there can be no real satisfaction in a life devoted entirely to the satisfaction of personal desires. If one is to be consumed by passion, I can think of no more worthy, all-consuming passion than the struggle for human rights, greater opportunity, and a livable planet as our legacy. Finally, I remember the time I spent with the late Dr. Benjamin Mays, longtime president of Morehouse College, a great leader who took Martin Luther King under his wing when he came to Morehouse at age 15 and helped to shape him into the man he became, and so many others. We got honorary degrees together at Oberlin College in 1983, and at the time spent some joyful hours sitting on the porch, talking through our history, which we agreed, with all due respect to Massachusetts England Minister Theodore Parker, that the moral arc of the university is long and sometimes bends toward justice, but it also bends toward injustice if you don't stop it sometime. Dr. Mays, his take on fulfillment and value of dreams, I think, is even better than Teddy Roosevelt's or even Ben Franklin's, I hasten to add. He said it is not a disgrace, it's not a disgrace if you don't reach the stars, but it is a disgrace to have no stars to see. So, if you don't reach the stars, okay. But it's a disgrace if you don't have any stars to see. Wherever you go, whatever you do, remember, he said, not failure, but low aim is the tragedy. Thank you very much, and congratulations and best wishes. Clark University, 2022. Congratulations to you. Thank you. Let's get to it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Berry, for your wonderful address. Our second honorary degree recipient is David Angel. Presenting President Emeritus Angel is Professor of History, Douglas Little.
Mr. President, I have the honor of presenting David Angel, geographer extraordinaire, lifelong fan of the Chelsea Football Club, former president of Clark University. I've had the good fortune to know David ever since he arrived at Clark in 1987, sporting, believe this, dark hair, a full beard, and the ever-present infectious smile. Having taught with him, having worked alongside him, and having watched him lead Clark into the new millennium, I'm delighted to welcome him back to campus on this special day. David, we are very lucky that you chose to spend your entire academic career here at Clark. You rose through the ranks in the Graduate School of Geography to serve as director before being named Joan Kraft Laskoff Professor of Economics, Technology, and Environment. Your cutting-edge research on the greening of industry showed big business how to transform vicious circles into virtuous ones. First as Dean of Graduate Studies and Research, and then as Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, you were an energetic innovator who helped reshape the university's curriculum by connecting liberal education with effective practice. During your 10 years as our 9th president, you provided Clark with the vision and the resources necessary to meet the challenges of the 21st century. You led a successful capital campaign and raised more than $150 million, not only by re-engaging Clark alums with their alma mater, but also by making new friends for the university. You were a master builder whose handiwork includes the academic commons at Goddard Library and the Shake Family for Alumni and Student Engagement Center across Main Street. And even though you completed your 33-year run in Worcester in the midst of an incredibly disruptive global pandemic, you remained what you have always been, a bold, kind, and unflappable leader who left Clark a much better place than when you first set foot on campus during the university's centennial year. Mr. President, on behalf of the trustees, faculty, students, and staff of Clark University, it gives me great pleasure to request that the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters honoris causa be conferred upon David Angel.
By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Clark University, I do hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. I present you with the diploma and hood of Clark University and warmly welcome you to the company of alumni who challenge convention and change our world. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Our third honorary degree recipient is Annette Gordon Reed. Presenting her will be Amy Richter, Associate Professor of History.
Mr. President, it is my honor to present Dr. Annette Gordon Reed, the Carl M. Loeb University Professor at Harvard University, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, and a leading voice on the history of race in America. Dr. Gordon Reed, you have done momentous work to recover the stories of enslaved African Americans, especially through your books, Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, An American Controversy, and The Hemings of Monticello, An American Family. Through your exhaustive research and engrossing prose, you have revived national interest in the complex and proud Hemings family, whose blood ties to Thomas Jefferson, supported through DNA analysis, have long been the source of rumor, conjecture, and debate. Thanks to your tireless investigation and by giving a platform to those whose accounts had routinely been dismissed by scholars, you challenged Americans to rethink narratives of their nation's founders and the history that enshrined them. The many awards earned by the Hemings of Monticello, including the 2009 Pulitzer Prize in History and the National Book Award for Nonfiction, are a testament to how your work has decoded the ways in which history is shaped and how new information must compel us to reconsider popular narratives. Among other honors that have confirmed your prestigious standing among history's finest scholars are the National Humanities Medal, awarded to you by President Barack Obama, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and a MacArthur Fellowship. You are also an elected Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and a member of the American Philosophical Society. Dr. Gordon Reed, in your recent memoir on Juneteenth, you provided essential context to the Juneteenth holiday as it has evolved into a central theme of our difficult and necessary national conversation. Through your vivid writings, you urge us to understand the significance of this important day, both for Black Texans like yourself and for a nation grappling with a past that you continue to rediscover and help redefine. Mr. President, on behalf of the trustees, faculty, students, and staff of Clark University, I request that the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, be conferred on Dr. Annette Gordon Reed.
By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Clark University, I do hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. I present you with the diploma and hood of Clark University and warmly welcome you into the company of alumni who challenge convention and change our world. Congratulations. Our fourth and final honorary degree recipient is Doug Wright. Presenting him will be Gino Diorio, Professor of Theater.
Mr. President, I have the honor of presenting Doug Wright, one of America's greatest living playwrights. Mr. Wright, your career in the theater has been and continues to be exemplary. You are that rare commodity, a writer who is gifted in a number of different mediums, and your accomplishments in each are extraordinary. You have been produced 4 times on Broadway, and your work has been seen in over 30 countries. You have won the highest honors offered by the American theater, yet somehow you also find time to support countless up-and-coming artists, always working to improve the strength of the theater community. To describe your work as broad in scope would be an understatement. You take on topics that other writers shy away from. You have written books for a number of musicals, including Great Gardens, which untangles the complicated dynamics of a dysfunctional mother-daughter relationship, and War Paint, which focuses on the rivalry between 20th century female entrepreneurs Elizabeth Arden and Helena Rubinstein. You wrote both the play and screenplay for Quills, imagining the final days of the Marquis de Sade. And at the same time, you have given us lighter fare, such as the delightful musical The Little Mermaid. Yeah, hard to believe. It is hard to believe one writer has taken on such different topics so effectively. But you are, of course, best known for your play, I Am My Own Wife, which examines the life of Charlotte von Mahlsdorf, a transgender woman who somehow survived the Nazi and communist regimes in East Berlin. It is no surprise that for this iconic work, you won the Tony Award, the Drama Desk Award, and the Pulitzer Prize. Doug, you consistently give back to the playwriting community, mentoring artists at many levels. And as head of the Dramatists Guild, you show tremendous leadership and foresight. You are a treasure to the American theater and an inspiration to us all. Mr. President, on behalf of the trustees, faculty, students, and staff at Clark University, it gives me great pleasure to request that the degree of Doctor of Fine Arts, honoris causa, be conferred on Doug Wright.
By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Clark University, I do hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Fine Arts, honoris causa, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. I present you with the diploma and hood of Clark University, and I warmly welcome you into the company of alumni who challenge convention and change our world. Congratulations.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce a video excerpt from the Clark University Festival concert held on April 27th at Mechanics Hall in downtown Worcester. In it, Clark University Chorus and the Sinfonia, accompanied by the New England Repertory Orchestra, performed the Choral Fantasy Opus 80 by Ludwig van Beethoven.
They deserve a round of applause, no? Come on. I had the privilege to attend that conference in Mechanic Hall, and it was truly spectacular. Students are incredibly talented. My name is Sebastián Rollo. I'm the Provost and the Vice President of Academic Affairs. I hope you are enjoying the beautiful New England weather. And it is now my privilege to introduce the Chair of the Clark Faculty and the Henry J. Lear Chair in Language, Literature, and Culture, Professor Robert Dean Tobin.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Robert Tobin, and I am the elected chair of Clark University's faculty, sitting over here. On behalf of the faculty, I would like to extend congratulations to all the 2022 graduates of the university, and we would also like to thank all of those family and friends who supported these graduates. Now, I'm sorry on this hot day to be standing between you and your commencement, but I do have a few remarks. I suspect many of my colleagues, and perhaps also many of you in the audience, tend to think of this as a graduation ceremony because we're celebrating the achievements that you have accomplished in the last 4 or so years. You succeeded against remarkable adversity. You have had to study, work, research, and learn, complete capstone projects, theses, and in some cases even dissertations, all under the shadow of 2 years of a pandemic, with classes conducted on Zoom, mask mandates, and frequent COVID tests. There was always the anxiety of contracting the disease. Some of you did test positive and fall ill. Some of you might have lost people who were dear to you. I know this pandemic stymied plans. Among the students I work with, many of the graduating students this year were not able to study abroad. And that's just one of the many things that might have changed. But this has now become the story of your generation, an integral part of your identity, one that is different from everyone else's. I can assure you, none of us on the faculty went to college during a similar pandemic. None of us were undergraduates in 1918 when the college at Clark closed down for 3 weeks because of the Spanish flu. That was supposed to be funny. This COVID experience has become your generation's experience. It will weave its way into your identity and mark you distinctively in the coming decades, probably in ways that aren't yet clear at all. Speaking of the coming decades, I started out by saying that many of us probably think of this event as a graduation because we're celebrating our achievements up until now. But actually it's called a commencement because it's supposed to look forward and not backwards. Most of you who have earned your bachelor's degrees are entering your 20s, which will likely be a decade of change, growth, and development. You'll try new jobs, new educational opportunities, new living situations, new relationships, and new identities. This is an exciting phase that our colleague, Professor Jeffrey Annette, has dubbed emerging adulthood. It may at times seem confusing and perhaps even frightening, but it is simply the process of your own evolution to become the person you were meant to be. Some of you who have earned master's or doctor's degrees may be in fact entering your 30s, 40s, or perhaps even 50s. I've been through all those decades, and I can assure you that each one involved exciting and unexpected changes. They were all different from, and for the most part, better than what I had been led to expect. Whichever decade you're entering, I speak again for the faculty when I say that as you embark on these journeys, we wish you all the luck in the world. We hope that while you are making new discoveries, aspects of your liberal arts education and graduate studies at Clark will help you. I know many of your memories will be from outside the classroom, from the dormitories, the cafeteria, the clubs, and even from off campus in Worcester. But as time goes on, I'm sure there will also be memories from your formal education here. An experience in a lab, a subtle concept from a difficult text, an internship, a memorable music concert, or an exciting event at the theater, a fascinating lecture, an insight to another country's language or culture, a meaningful poem, novel, or film. If any of those memories come back to you as you make your progress in your life, let us know if you have the time. For many of us, there is nothing more rewarding than an email or a letter or even a visit from a former student. With that, I'll conclude. Once again, congratulations and good luck.
Thank you, Bob, for your inspiring words. And now turn to the moment you've been all waiting for. It is with great pleasure and the favoring presence of those here assembled that we now turn to the process of conferring Doctor of Philosophy, Master's, and Baccalaureate degrees. On behalf of Clark University, I have the honor to present the candidates for and recent recipients of the degree of Doctor in Philosophy. I declare that each candidate has fulfilled all the requirements of the university for the degree, including as appropriate and acceptable dissertation, and request that the degree be conferred upon each of them.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Clark University, I do hereby confer upon you the doctoral degrees just indicated, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. And I welcome you to the ancient and honorable company of scholars. Congratulations.
President Fithian, on behalf of Clark University, I have the honor to present the candidates for and recent recipients of the Master of Arts, Master of Arts in Education, Master of Arts in Teaching, Master of Health Science, Master of Science, Master of Fine Arts, Master of Business Administration, Master of Science in Accounting, Master of Science in Accounting Analytics, Master of Science in Business Analytics, Master of Science in Finance, Master of Science in Management, Master of Science in Marketing, Master of Science in Marketing Analytics, Master of Public Administration, Master of Science in Communication, Master of Science in Data Analytics, Master of Science in Information Technology, I'm getting there. Master of Science in Project Management degrees. I declare that each candidate has fulfilled all the requirements of the university for the degree and request that the degree be conferred upon them.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Clark University, I do hereby confer upon you the master's degrees as indicated, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto, and I express the hope that your learning will lead you to advance knowledge in or enrich the practice of your chosen field. Congratulations.
Graduates, you may now be seated. Will all the candidates for all baccalaureate degrees please rise and be recognized?
This is much shorter, I promise. President Fithian, on behalf of Clark University, I have the honor to present the candidates for and recent recipients of the degree of Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science. I declare that each candidate has fulfilled all the requirements of the university for the degree, and I request that the degree be conferred upon each of them.
At least the first half of what I'm going to say, so I'm going to invite you to say it with me. By virtue of the authority vested in us, I do hereby confer upon you the baccalaureate degrees as indicated, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. But I also express the hope that this, your first degree, will inspire a lifetime of learning. Congratulations. Woo!
Graduates, you may flip the tassel from right to left. Congratulations. You may now be seated.
Please join me once again, and I'm going to ask all of my colleagues on the platform, my faculty colleagues, and all of their families to please stand and once again recognize all of today's graduates and honorary degree recipients who are now alumni of Clark University. Thank you very much. This concludes the first of today's 3 ceremonies. We will now pause for a brief, roughly 15-minute intermission, while all graduate school students and their guests, and those dignitaries and administrative officials who are participating in the awarding of graduate degrees proceed to the Neller Athletic Center. Faculty Marshal Torres Stone will lead the procession to the Neller of graduate students and faculty. All undergraduate students and their families will please remain seated while the platform party, faculty, and graduate students leave the campus green. Thank you very much.